I take that back. But anyways, no homo. Continuing on with the video.
Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, they weren't satisfied with people that were just competent or proficient. They wanted people that had mastered the skill. A lot of our people that I talk to that want to email me, talk to me one-on-one, especially millennials. I understand millennials, okay? It's not that I think they're lazy. It's not that.
We've already been through. Let me play it again. I'll play it again.
What is all this? I don't really
do it this way. The response to the Lawrence video that Chrissy put down, I will do later. But there's something that I want to. There's some things that actually get my intellectual higher. I don't know what Miss Chrissy graduated in. I don't know what her degree is in, but as a scholar, she sucks. I'm just going to say that for me, as a scholar. Now, as far as you feeling sorry for the women that come to my channel, women like you women are not teaching them what they need. You're talking about colorism and showing pictures and stuff. Basically, at the end of the day, the stuff, the shit that you're talking about
doesn't matter.
This is something that's personal.
I want to address
because you attack me intellectually. There's two things that shit.
Here we go.
Especially as it pertains to black women that I've already put up and discredited
on my YouTube page.
Look, you as a millennial, too fucking lazy.
Huh? Oh, wait, okay, we know. Oh, he listened to it.
Now, can you hear me? How did? Well, how do I hear you? That's the problem. How do I send you a link where you can talk to me? Yeah, I'm trying to get to MGTOW Universe. I probably shouldn't have broadcast the chat. Now you can hear us, but I can't hear him.
Yeah, I'm trying to get the.
There you go.
I probably should have broadcast the chat. You can hear us, but I can't hear him.
I don't think this is gonna work.
He's behind a few seconds.
The MGTOW Universe. I probably should have broadcast the chat.
Yeah, if I listen to you, then we're gonna get a feedback.
On my YouTube page.
I don't think he's gonna work.
No. If I post the link to mine, then everybody's gonna come in. But I'll post the link, but other people are gonna come in because it's public. But go ahead. We'll try to make it work. Come on in, bro. Try it again.
Here we go.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh man, talk about chewing gum and baling wire. Shit. Reminds me back in the days when I was on a 300 baud modem.
How's it going, man?
That's all right, man.
Fantastic. All right, let's get into it.
Go ahead.
Well, I was basically going through your video, and my argument was basically was that you don't have to go through pain to learn. Your argument was that you do have to go through pain, and my argument is that you don't have to.
If you want to master something, you got to go through pain. I mean, that's not even it's not even an argument, because I've read so many books on teaching children and teaching people, and they all say the exact same thing. You have to exercise that mental muscle.
But I'm not advocating for completeness, BGS. You are. I'm not advocating for mastery. You are.
Yeah.
I'm advocating for productivity, not completeness. That's your argument, not mine.
In other words, it's called front loading. Okay, if you start mastering things in the front, your productivity gets better down the line, because you don't have to keep going back and learning stuff. When you hit a gotcha, you already recognize it because you have the experience. Like if you're a master programmer, you've been through 5 languages. A lot of them, most anything that people build are eerily similar. I don't care what it is.
Well, it depends on the programming paradigm. I mean, if you take someone that's been programming procedurally for 20 years, and then you give them a functional programming problem, I guarantee you they're going to be looking up a reference of some sort.
Well, I'm saying they will have to bring themselves up to speed on that way. Say if you took somebody that did procedural programming like the first one, okay, if you learn that the procedural programming completely the first time, okay, it's not like you got to start from zero when you go to a object-oriented programming.
You're right.
In other words, because what I'm saying is, I came up through when it was nothing but procedural.
Exactly.
And then the same guys, in other words, it took them half the time to pick up object-oriented programming, because they already had the basics already there. So all they had to do is add what they didn't know.
Right.
So if you have both of those, you have that's your first language, and then your second language is object-oriented programming. So everything else after that will be very, very similar.
I agree with that.
If you learn both of those things completely. So if you
no, you don't have to learn them completely. That's where we disagree.
For a guy to be functional, you don't have to learn anything completely. You can learn a little bit about everything and be functional.
Right. And reference the rest.
You can reference the rest. But the thing is, down the line, that's going to slow you down, because you have to reference the rest.
Well, if you're gonna learn something completely, you're not gonna use it. You're just gonna forget it unless you keep refreshing yourself. Right.
If you learn it the first time, even if you reference it, you said, "Oh, okay, yeah, I got it." You don't have to learn it again.
But if you're referencing it after you learn it, then why learn it in the first place if you're going to end up referencing it anyways?
Because if you reference it, referencing and remembering something that's up there and recalling is different than actually putting it in there in the first place. You're retrieving. It's easier to retrieve than to build.
Yeah, but when you reference something, you have the answer there. The answer is still in front of you, whether you can retrieve it or not. The answer is still the same.
What I'm saying is, okay, say if you have a new call or a new function or whatever it is, right?
Okay.
And you never used it before.
Mm-hmm.
And so referencing it, yeah, you could type it out and reference it. But the thing is, have you learned it? Have you learned how it works? Have you learned how it's going to react?
Well, in programming specifically, we create functions to abstract away the functionality so we don't have to learn about every single function that we use. Because if programmers did that, we wouldn't have time to do anything else. That's why we create libraries and we create classes. So the programmers that come after us that read our code or want to use our code, they don't have to learn every single line of code that we did. That's what the dry principle is about. So we don't have, the next person doesn't have to resolve the same issue that we've solved. That's wasting time.
Unless something goes wrong with it.
Unless something goes wrong, then yes, you are correct. They will have to know the code. You are correct. But if nothing goes wrong, they just want to use it.
If nothing goes wrong, there's no holes in it, there's no bug in it, because if there's a bug in it, guess what you got to do?
You have to debug it. Yes.
Yeah, debug it. You got to go back through the code.
Yes.
Yeah.
But that's when the original programmers. That's when you call up the original programmer and says, "Hey,
call up somebody that mastered the code and say, hey, fix this shit."
Yeah, because it's your code. It's your code. This is your solution. Your solution doesn't work.
And if what a guy that has mastered the code can look at it and say, okay, I see what he did.
Because, well, you could do that, but again, if you're dealing with, as in most programmers, dealing with multiple libraries, if you're doing that for every single bug in every single library, again, you don't have time to do anything else. That's why you call up the original programmer, the master of the code, and you say, here's this bug, please fix this. Instead of trying to figure it out yourself, because there's just not enough time, especially in the context of in computer programming, there's just not enough time.
And with most times in your programming, you can probably agree with this. Most times, the problems that go wrong with code are eerily similar.
Yes.
So in other words, if you've seen it, it's just like you as a programmer. If I said debug this, because you've been doing it for so long, it's far easier for you to do it because you've been doing it so long than somebody that's just starting out.
Yes, I agree with that.
In other words, I don't know how many languages you've programmed in.
So many, I don't remember. I lost count. But pretty much, well, C++, Perl, Python, C#, Java. Let's just go with those.
Oh yeah, well, what I'm saying is, and most of that are based on C.
Yes.
You learn C when you first started, yes. Right?
I did.
You learn C. So in other words, C++ and C# are just derivations of the same thing, right?
Yes.
Yeah. In other words, it's just a different. If I remember, because I'm not really a programmer, if I remember from when it started, because at first it was just all C, and then they added C++, which means they added what I think C++ was object oriented, right?
It is
from procedural, because from procedural to C++. And then C# was another abstraction layer on top of C. But if you knew C, if you already knew C, or you're proficient at C, then guess what? C++ was no big deal because you knew the underlying programming underneath it, right?
You're correct. Yes.
Yeah.
And they're very similar.
They're very similar because if I didn't have babies, I would have learned it, because the first thing they teach you is C. Why? Because C, even though it's in other words, C is the foundation. That's what the foundation. That's what the shit's built on. And from C and C libraries, if you learn C and learn how to use the C libraries, then C++ is not that big a deal. It's just a different environment. In fact, it's easier because now you're using larger pieces and larger libraries. But you already understand how they work because you know how the C works.
Right, but the thing is, like today, like no one is really teaching C these days because you
I
don't
know.
need it. The C and C++ are no longer the standards.
You
So you
don't
can teach.
you
Go
don't
ahead.
know you don't need C until you do.
No, you don't need C at all.
Until you do.
Well, let me take that back. Let me take that back. If you're going to, it depends on the kind of software that you're making. Now, if, like I said before, if you're programming a Python, you don't need to learn C to debug or to do anything like that. Even though the Python interpreter is built with C, you don't need to know. You don't need to know C. Now, if you want to take on the task of building a different version or a fork of Python, then yes, you do need to know C. But
there's so many. Okay, yeah, maybe I'm getting too goddamn old. There were so many times, there's so because I was a lurker more than anything else because
okay.
I didn't have time to actually. Well, hell, I had to work and take care of kids, so actually going out and doing it for a living it would have been too big of a switch. You had to take time off and actually go out there and do that shit because the programming does take time. But the thing is that so many times that something would go wrong with a C++ program or a C# program, and they didn't know how to fucking fix it. So I had to call a C guy, dig in, and figure out what the fuck is wrong with this shit. So if you didn't know it,
well, the thing with I don't know what year you're talking about, but back in the 90s, the way they taught it was you learned C first and then C++ on top of it. So it's pretty much a package deal. Now, of course, again, you could teach C++ today without C, but for C++, I wouldn't recommend it because you should learn. If you're going to take on C++, C, in my opinion, has to be in the equation. It has to be to get that lower level of abstraction. It is important because the programs you're making with C++, like compilers and stuff like that, you actually should be creating that with C and not C++, but that's my opinion. But yeah, C and C++ is a package deal, but you don't need to know Python or Perl and C# and Java on top of C. So that's been abstracted away.
It's been abstracted away. It's because it's underneath. It's hidden.
Yes.
Yeah. So
but if you're a person,
go ahead.
But if you're a person that wanted to learn, if you wanted to get into computational science and you was going for your PhD in computer science, then yes, you have to learn assembly and binary and C and C++ and all of those languages. Yes,
because they're not going for proficiency. They're going for.
You're right. They're going for completeness. You are correct.
They're going for mastery and completeness. I mean, mastery doesn't mean perfection. That doesn't mean every gotcha, every kick, every stone, because like you said, every environment, even though the languages can be the same, can be virtually the same. The thing is, every time you build a chip, if you really want to know a chip, you got to go all the way down to the binary ones and zeros. Okay, that takes too much time. That's like when you have a programming language.
Right.
What I'm saying. So every time somebody comes up with a new chip and plugs it in, and they have to build libraries for it and hooks for your C, your C++, your languages to plug into. Somebody's got to create those. Number one.
Depends on if that processor is not backwards compatible with a architecture you already know.
Yeah, what I'm saying is even if it's backwards compatible, guess what they have? Gotchas.
That's true too.
And they got gotcha. So in other words, I don't care how long you program, how long you try to, if you master the language, you haven't mastered. Every time they come out with a chip, you can't turn over every rock because there's always going to be holes. There's going to be whatever because the chip has its own language.
And also the programming languages have like their own versions, like the C84 standard, the 88 standard, the 98 standard, so on and so forth.
Yeah. Every time you have a chip, they have to program. They have to program a language into it so that you can access the ones and zeros, and they have to build an abstraction layer on top of it. And there's always going to be gotchas.
Yeah. Well, as I said last night, there's gotchas even on the hardware level because you can exploit the assembly of Intel architecture right at its very root because the engineers, there are a lot of things that the engineers didn't even think of when they made the processor and the architecture.
You can't because they're too complex.
Right.
Not even the machines that are designing it can do it complete. Not even AI can do that because there's too many variables in it.
Right. The best you could do is swat down the bugs that pop up. That's the best you can do.
I'm saying is mastery is not perfection.
Right. You know, I don't go with the whole expert paradigm because I don't. What does that really mean? Really, some people say it's the 10,000 hours. I don't know. I mean, it's just.
Well, that's it depends. Depends on what you're doing. What I'm saying is how many hours did you? I mean, I mean, you've been programming. You don't have to necessarily program in one language,
right?
To be a master at programming.
But what does that mean to be a master of programming, though?
That's what I'm
saying. How do we quantify that?
Huh?
How do we quantify that?
It's basically it's who's next to you, who's at the top of the rung. In other words, where are you in the hierarchy? You know, if nobody knows how to program and you're the only one that does, guess who the master is?
I don't see it as I don't know, man. I don't see it as kind of like a hierarchy and stuff like that. I just see, you know, how large is your toolbox of problem solving? Yeah, and how long does it take?
And how long does it take to solve? How exactly? What I'm saying is mastering a language, you know, to master a language does take a long time.
My question is there value in mastering in the context and computer programming? Yeah. Is there value since there's so many darn versions and variables that you can't account for?
I remember years ago, man. Years ago, I don't know how long ago it was. It might be 20 years ago. Could be. The kernel for Windows at the time was so complex. Okay, there was how many people that actually knew it that were alive?
You said 2 last time we talked about this.
Yeah, I think it was 2 at the time when I was reading. There was only 2 guys. There was one guy inside Intel that knew the kernel, and there's one other guy that was outside. That they anytime went wrong, they had to pay him as a they had to pay him to come in because there was 2 guys. One guy knew it from the inside, and one guy used to every Windows version he used to reverse engineer it, so he knew it so completely. He had mastered it so completely. He was the only other guy that actually knew the Windows kernel. At the time, they were printing it. They could have been lying. What I'm saying is that's what they said. There's one guy inside Intel. It was an old head that actually knew how it worked, and there was one guy on the outside. They had like I said, every Windows version, every DOS version, every Windows version had reversed engineered it from time he was a kid. And there was only 2 guys that actually knew. So anytime something actually went wrong that they couldn't fix, the programs couldn't fix, they had to call this guy in to work with the other guy to actually fix the shit. But those are the only 2 guys that knew. So in other words, they had to pay him a whole lot of money. In fact, he was. They didn't even mention the dude's name, okay? Because if you weren't on the inside, you couldn't know him. If you weren't on the inside, you couldn't afford him. So a whole lot of businesses that had Windows problems that they couldn't solve, they say, okay, you need to call this guy.
Yeah,
he had traveled all over the world fixing shit.
I don't understand why there would only be 2 people when
because
it's just assembly.
Because they had spaghetti noodled all this stuff together to the point where it was so complex people had forgotten how it was built. There's only 2 guys that knew how it was built. And when something inside, the major inside went wrong, they had to call one of these 2 guys. In fact, I can't remember the dude's name. Some of the programs online knew him. But for the most part, those are only 2 experts. You see a lot of people like that. I mean, masters, let's put it that way.
Okay.
That virtually perfected the art of just that thing. What I'm saying is we have gotten so far away from even trying to do that. I mean, it's mastery is something that you shoot for, you know. And as we stop shooting for shit, like, okay, all right, I don't want to master it. And that's what I see happening. Okay, I don't want to be perfect. Okay, yeah, I'll shoot for mastery. Okay, I don't want to master it anymore. I'll be proficient. You know, and then now I don't want to be proficient anymore. I'll be functional because I can get away with it. So in other words, I see the steps going downward to where now at the point, okay, we want to push the button and figure it out. That's what I you know, it's not not even about it being late. It's just millennials have been programmed just to do that. You know, I remember I was talking to one guy, he's a millennial. We were going back and forth, and I think we were talking about the future and what did I think the future of human beings will look like. And I said I think it was Fringe. I said The Observers. I said, go ahead, look it up on YouTube. He said, well, can you really tell me about it? I said, dude, come on. Come on. I can't spoon feed you everything. I'm not supposed to feed you everything. I have a lot of that on my channel. A lot of times they say, well, BGS, how come why do you read the article into the YouTube video? I said, because I get tired of answering the questions when they could have actually read the thing. Go on, hit the link, go read the article if you're interested. Why are you asking me questions that are in the article? That's why I posted the link. So I said, okay, instead of answering questions, you know, for the next 3-4 months because somebody didn't want to read, I'll just read it into the record. So that way they don't have to do anything.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
In this high speed society that we live in, is there value in spending 10,000 hours mastering something when it will most likely be obsolete in 2 to 5 years anyways?
Well, yes, because one, going through the process, like I said, going through the process teaches you something about yourself, how to learn. Number one, because if you master something, then you can master something else. Or you can take the lessons that you learn mastering something and apply it. Okay, this is the way I learn. This is where I learned this. That's how come somebody can say, like, master the piano and all of a sudden pick up a violin and figure it out because, okay, I know how to read music. There's things that you can apply.
But that's this in a society.
Hey, dude.
I told you to post it in my chat room, not yours.
I can't post it in your chat room. I have a wrench.
Oh, that's right. You can't post link. My bad. I forgot about that. Okay, that's my fault.
Yeah, I don't have a wrench. Yeah. I tried. That's the first thing I tried. Just post it in the chat room. I don't have a wrench.
So,
but it's okay.
So what was I saying?
But let's talk about. I didn't want to post it in mine because I knew this was. But most of the good, I just have to swat them back. City of Truth is like hard headed.
Excuse me.
Go ahead.
So you're talking about building grit, building self-discipline. I would argue that there are different ways of going, like hacking away at a new problem also builds that grit and not giving up. And not just studying for mastery on one topic.
If you hack away at it, then you have to go back to the art of learning the program deeply, right? Because now you have to go back and dig in and figure out what's wrong because you didn't get it in the first place. Now you got to go back and retrieve it. That's called digging back in. You're forced to master it then. You're forced to do it.
Let's take quantum mechanics as an example.
Mm-hmm.
Even though quantum mechanics has been around for 100 years, yeah, you can study like the attempted tests from those that came before you. But if they didn't work, you only know how things don't work. But that doesn't. I guess.
I'm very good at this. Okay, because I was a chemist. Okay, I was a chemist. So in other words, knowing what not to do is as important as doing as what?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Knowing what not to do is as important as what?
Yeah, I'm not saying that it's not important, but again, you don't have to be a master to be able to, whatever master means, to be able to solve new problems. Or you don't even have to research or research how others resolve the problem to gain grit. Now, I understand that for some people it is. I just don't think that's the best or the most efficient way.
What I'm saying is, I'm not talking about an individual person, because you put in the work. So you can say that you haven't, but you put in a lot of work programming, have you not?
I have.
Well, how many? If I was to say,
definitely more than 10,000 hours.
That's what I'm talking about. Okay, so you didn't just start out being MGTOW Universe at this level, a program at this level. You had to put in a whole lot of hours, right?
Right.
Okay.
But if someone told me today in 2017, like if I was 16 today or 14 today rather, they say, hey, you should learn C++ and not Python. And they told me, well, because it builds character, you're going to struggle. I wouldn't do it because there was no Python back then, and we had to deal with C and C++ back in 1998. We don't have to do that today.
And you don't exactly. So that's why I don't completely blame millennials, because you don't have to.
But who would though? Like, why would you choose the path of more resistance? Because wisdom?
The same reason you lift weights, the same reason you run, you know.
As I said in my video, BJ, like if there's another way for people to get in shape, like a viable long-term solution that's not detrimental to their health, that gives them the same results as lifting weights, I guarantee you your gyms will be empty. I guarantee the gyms would be empty. The only reason why people still lift weights because there is not a viable alternative yet. Who would go to the gym and lift weights? Why would they choose that when they don't have to?
Exactly. But they would never. There's more things. There's lifting weights, working out, going through the struggle teaches you a lot about yourself, a lot about your body. You never learn about your body if you don't.
I agree, but my argument is, yes, that is one way of doing it, but if technology solves it, I'm sure there are other ways of getting those same skills.
And you build another abstraction layer.
Right. But there is an abstraction layer for reading or for lifting weights yet, but
and then what I'm saying is, you go down the line, what's going to happen?
Well, assuming that person does nothing else that's mentally stimulating, or in this case, physically stimulating. If technology solves that problem, we don't have to worry about that anymore. We don't walk across the country, or we don't walk to work every day to build character. To appreciate cars.
Well, you can appreciate the car, but the more abstraction layers you build on the car, at least the less you understand it. And
I agree with that.
And the fewer and fewer people that can actually work on the goddamn thing.
You're right. But we don't choose the path of most resistance of walking to appreciate what we have, the technology that we have. And that's where where you were saying, like, you got to go through the pain. Now, I don't know if that's in respect to mastery or just learning, but to mastery, yes, I agree with you. You have to go through the pain.
You lose something. You always lose something. You always every time you go through an abstraction layer, that you always lose something. It's just like why do people go through the pain of learning 3,000-year-old philosophy?
They have an interest in it. Does the average? If someone has an interest in philosophy, they will go through whatever pain that they will go through because they have a genuine interest in it. But if you're talking about the average person going through 3,000 lines or whatever you just said through philosophy, and they don't have to, guess what the average person is going to do? They're not going to do it.
And they're not going to do it. Exactly. Those are the people, for better or worse, to wind up going and giving their $20 to the preacher so he can actually kind of digest it for them, which is basically where I sit.
Okay.
Okay. In other words, BGS digest this for me.
Excuse me, if I may say something.
No, you may not. Okay. It's not an open conversation. The reason that I'm on a hangout is because I'm talking to him. So.
I understand.
Okay. Yeah.
I just wanted to maybe clarify something here, just to make you understand.
Okay, real quick, man. 1 minute.
Um,
You want to see what I mean, MGTOW Universe? That's why I want to do it. I do it this way.
My
Go ahead. Go ahead, Naam. Go ahead.
My apologies, man. Universe MGTOW, what he's trying to say is, like, there's this concept where they say, you got dues to pay. And the reason why people have to go through what they have to go through to understand or master something is because there is a process to it. And you have to understand the context and how things are. Because it's about evolution and whatnot.
Yeah. That's like your music is shit right now, man.
You know what I'm saying? Damn right. That's why I don't listen to shit. I go back to old school, man.
If you listen to back in the day, man, Cardi B would have got ran off the stage. Don't bring that shit in here, man.
Well,
I hear you.
What is that?
Huh?
What does that sound?
I think somebody's got a mic open and making noise.
Hang on, let me turn off my mic.
Everybody, finish your question, man, so you can mute up. I don't want to eject everybody, so I don't mind you staying on. But the reason this is
holy crap! There's a lot of people in this room. Holy shit!
I know, man. I know. That's how come I didn't want to put it up. But I'm saying, go ahead, man. While you're on, man, go ahead and I don't know if you want to do it.
I agree. I agree with what he's saying, and I agree mostly what you're saying, BJS. I don't agree that you have to go through pain to learn.
You do have to go through pain, man. The neuroscientists.
We don't live in a time where we have to. Not for most things, we don't.
You don't have to. But I'm saying is, it's called decay and degrading. You're degrading what you're doing as you're going on down the line. In other words, if you don't have to. Most people try to be. Used to be you had to try to be perfect. And then,
so you mean to tell me? Let me finish.
It used to be you have to try to be perfect, and then mastery will do, and then being proficient will do, and then just being let me hack these two things. That's like I talked about script kiddies. Okay, if it gets down to the point where it's abstracted all the way, where I can just put two pieces of code together, don't really have to understand the doggone thing, see if it works, because the abstraction layer has gotten to the point all I have to do is just experiment really fast and try things over and over and over again, like thousands of times, till something works. Then you've gone from mastery to basically being a script kiddie. And where does it stop? Where's the line? Where do we abstract our knowledge away? Eventually what they're going to be doing is putting chips in your brain. You don't have to even do anything. Just you're born with it. You know what?
And when that happens, we'll have new problems to solve. I look forward to the day where people don't have to read anymore. Are you kidding me? I can learn calculus in 5 seconds. That sounds a whole hell of a lot better than 5 to 8 years.
Well, then,
sometimes advances of technology advance the way that we learn also.
Yeah, but the thing is, for somebody that had to struggle and advances to my access to information, because of like Angry Man was saying, because I did struggle and it was hard, and I had to build up that muscle. Now that I can access it, I can, because I've learned, I can actually filter information very, very quickly.
Right.
But if you never learn that, you don't know what's good, what's bad, what information is pertinent, what's not pertinent, how to put things together, because you never struggled. BGS didn't just, my essence here didn't just come because I just started doing this yesterday. I struggled with this shit for 20 years. I struggled to understand the global financial architecture, reading books, because everything's not online. Trust and believe, the majority of stuff is not online. And if you take somebody's YouTube video to understand it without understanding the underlying structure, then what you're getting is somebody, you're not even getting a cliff note. Okay, you're getting somebody's regurgitated 10, 15 minutes. It's like listen to an author talk about their book. You're gonna get some of the essence out of it, But all the other little details that are built up around it that you might need, you're not going to get. And if you don't read, so one day, yeah, possibly, to put a chip in your brain and you can upload all that. You can upload as much as you can into whatever structure that you have as far as the biological structure. You can upload it and know it instantly, sort of like the Matrix, where, okay, I know Kung Fu. And even Neo, where you upload something, you had to, even he had to struggle with the process to master it.
Right.
That's the whole thing. If you want to get to a certain, I mean, you can get to a level that's okay. You know, that's what we taught our kids. Okay, as long as you can get to the answer. Okay, and that's what I learned in math. That's what I said. Use that example in math. Up until up even through trig. As long as you get the answer, you're good. Okay, all we need to do is figure out how to plug in this formula, get the answer, and we're good, because that's all the teacher wants. Till you get to calculus, and it no longer holds. Oh, now we have to go back and all those formulas, all those definitions, all those all mean something. Okay, now I have to go back and find out what the meaning of all those things are. I got to go back and dig all those things back out because I didn't learn them in the first place, when I could have learned them completely in the first place, or at least as completely as possible in the first place. Now I go back and dig all that stuff out. I still got to put in the hours. Whether I get it, there's an old saying. I think it was called Midas breaks or something like that. It says, "Pay me now or pay me later." Sooner or later, you're going to have to go back and get it, unless you're absolutely lucky. You never have to run into that problem again. Most people aren't that lucky. What's his name? That owns Tesla, Musk. Okay, Musk is a PhD physicist. Okay, he put in a hell of a lot of hours before he became Elon Musk.
Right,
a hell of a lot of hours becoming Elon Musk. In fact, when he got into Silicon Valley and programming, man, he slept on couches, and he burned. I remember those kind of guys, man. They were burning 20 hours a day trying to do this shit. So in other words, by the time he became Elon Musk, he had already put in his time. He could look at something because he had experience and he had to actually do it. He could look at something and say, no, that's not going to work. How do you know? I know, I've been through this process already. That's not going to work. We need to do it this way. Same thing with Bill Gates. He would recognize Bill Gates. That's like Microsoft is not what it was because Bill Gates is gone. He retired. Bill Gates used to see a process. Oh shit, it's going in a different direction because he had mastered this stuff. It's going in a different direction. Stop what you're doing. This is the direction we need to go in. And show me the code and let me overlook the code and see if it's going in the direction I wanted to go in, because he'd mastered. Bill Gates didn't just become Bill Gates. Bill Gates started programming when he was 8 years old. And he basically started on big machines, big iron, because of where he was and who his father was. He can actually had access to it, and then he started programming the machines when he was a teenager, and used to sell that stuff. In other words, all these guys had put in the hours and mastered their craft well before they actually got on the stage. That's like, you don't see a Bill Gates anymore. Or you don't see Steve Jobs anymore, or Steve Wozniak anymore. They're not there anymore. So they're basically you have teams of people doing stuff. Okay, so those companies, those programs all start to lose momentum. Can you hear me? You still there?
Yeah, I can hear you. I'm still.
Oh, okay. You ended your stream. Okay, I was wondering.
I'm just reading your comments about how people saying that I don't like to think. I just.
Well, no, I wouldn't say. Well, the thing is, you actually, you don't think you put in the work. Okay, actually, you did.
No, I put in the work. I just wish I didn't have to. because the technology, well, I wouldn't have to do that now. The technology has come a long way since 1998, and there's a lot of things that I memorized that I still forgot anyways, but the development IDEs available now makes it to where you don't have to memorize the syntax. You just have to memorize the concepts.
Yeah, we're on the concept. In other words, and then in 10 years, what do you think is going to happen?
The field will be filled. The programming field would be filled with programmers, because abstraction layers has gotten a lot higher. There's a lot more programmers. Most of the programs today are JavaScript developers. And layers of abstraction, Node.js has allowed for them to enter the market. I don't have a problem with that. Now, does that mean that everyone's wages go down because there are more programmers? Yes, it does. That is one of the it offsets. But I will never. The benefits of technology, it has spoken for themselves since we are all in one spot talking and listening and chatting. Like 30 years ago, we all had to meet up at a bar or at a restaurant to be able to have this discussion. So abstraction layers, yes, there are downfalls. I've always acknowledged that. Me personally, and these days, the only skill I see worth mastering is mastering research, because finding answers to problems is always going to be valuable. But mastering something like a programming language or a branch of mathematics, no.
If you don't master it, you can't do it. In other words, the person that knows how to research, like me, had to put in the time solving problems, reading stuff that people don't want to, picking up books with research. Don't want to read, picking up books. You have to go through the book, whether it's online, whether it's in your hand, whether it's audio. So you got to go through the book. Still got to put in the time.
Right. I'm not disagreeing with that. My argument is against mastery and learning about the entire branch just for you to solve one or two problems. I think that's a huge waste.
Somebody's got to do it. Somebody's got to master it. Now, it might not be you, but you're going to have to go to somebody that has.
It depends on the problem and the domain, and it also depends on the problem.
And also, the thing is, it's a process. We keep going further and further and further and further and further away, and to the point where you've abstracted everything away. The whole learning process is away. And then what happens to the people? What's already happening to the people?
You know how I feel about the people that don't invest in their own education. We've already had that discussion plenty of times.
Yeah. Why do you think they don't?
I think the people who don't invest, they don't?
Because they don't have to.
No. When it comes to investing in their own education for the future, for a technology-based future, if you're not investing in yourself, you will be left behind in automation. I could say that with confidence. Yes. Just going by the last 100 years. So if you're sitting at home on YouTube, goofing around and like you want to learn programming, but you don't want to put in the time, okay, but
you still
that will have consequences.
Or you don't put in enough time.
What does that mean, though? Not enough time. Like, how do we I don't know what that means. Not enough time. Like, that's subjective, though. Like,
okay, you just use the random, the random 10,000 hours, which is something.
That seems to be said a lot. Like 10,000 hours.
Well, because they took. Did you ever read? I think it was it
the 20-hour week or something like that?
No. It was actually in a book called Outliers, and he actually quoted the study. I can't remember where the study came from, but that's what made it famous. There was several studies where they took people that were at the top. In other words, people that were at the top level. I think it was like the top. He said the top 10%. The top 10% of anybody in any field. So they gathered all the experts that were top 10% in any field, right? Music, engineering, programming, but on and on and on and on and on, right? They took all these experts across a bunch of fields. They said, okay, and they said, okay, when did you start doing blah, 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 right? Learning how to do, learning to play music or learning the violin, piano, whatever it is, right? So when did you start learning to do that? And most people said about 5 or 6 that they started, or at the very latest 8. And they calculated. It took all these people. They calculated what is the difference between these people at the top 10% and everybody else. And they figured out, okay, the difference is the amount of time that they put in, and that's where the 10,000 hours came from. If you have actually put in diligent study, in other words, you're struggling with your material, okay, then over 10,000 hours, you will reach that top 10% of what they call masters. Now they said to get proficient, as they quote, it says somewhere between 3,000 and 5,000 hours to get proficient at it. To be adequate at it, you can spend significantly less time doing it, like 2,000 hours or 1,000 hours. You spend 1,000 hours doing it, you can become operational at something like programming. Spend 1,000 hours or somewhere within there. Within a year, you can be decent at programming. You won't be super at it, but you'll be decent at it. But that's where it came from. And it's been disputed because it was they've redone the studies over the last 10 years, because trying to remember the name that wrote the book Outliers. Gladwell, Malcolm Gladwell. But he's the one that made it famous. And it's actually true, because there was a guy.
Thank God.
I'm
sorry about that.
Is that you, Kevin?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, you come on, man. You can come on. I'll allow you on, man. You're
cool.
I was we just having this debate because you were having the same problem. What I'm saying is that because of the extraction layer that we built with technology, and our children, we have a lot because as parents, we didn't want our children to struggle the way we did. So instead of them,
so I heard some.
Go ahead, jump in.
I've been listening, and someone said, why would you do it? And if technology can basically give you a learning curve, everybody will rush to that, guaranteed. Talking about working out. Well, there's a learning curve. It's just not technology. It's called steroids. There's a learning curve. It's not the oven. It's called the microwave. There's a learning curve. If you can take 7 years to get a black belt in martial arts, or you can try to do Taibo, but the difference comes in the application. You face somebody who's a master, that learning curve that you thought you got by getting that 2-year black belt versus what I got in my 15-year struggle is a huge difference. Now, I think what I hear a lot of the millennials they're comparing themselves to each other. And that's a huge problem even in the workforce right now, because as they enter the workforce, a lot of the millennials are struggling with things called soft skills, and they're actually sending them back to school to come learn from people like me how to dress, how to interact with Generation X and baby boomers, how to compose emails, all these things that you and I learned in our tender years. These 25-year-olds are having to go back and be retaught because they had the benefit of this expedient technology, but they didn't get the foundation, because no one could tell them that you need to do this, because all they looked at was the answer. They don't see no value in the process.
Yeah, because they did a study amongst when the cell phone became popular, and you could actually text instead of write, right? And then what they're finding out is that the Japanese kids were losing the ability to write.
Oh yes.
They could read it. They could read it. But they couldn't. They knew how the letters were formed, but they couldn't actually sit down with a pen and paper and actually write.
Well, let me give you two stories before I have to jump into my appointment.
Okay.
There was a woman, I know a woman whose daughter, 19 years old, did not know how the postal system worked. She didn't know what the numbers on a house meant because she's grown up with GPS. So when she was trying to write a condolence letter to a relative, mom said, I want you to write a letter. She didn't know how to mail it. She didn't know what the 506 on your address meant. She didn't know that there's actually a grid system and this street meant this street meant that, because she never had to. And she had to learn how to write a letter. 19 years old. Girl was about, and she graduated summa cum laude 2 years later.
Yeah.
My daughter,
Mm-hmm.
I would sit back and make them, I said, do me a favor. I want you guys to tell me what the temperature is, or tell me what the weather's like, without using the words good or very. And I need to pack for a trip for 2 weeks. Let me know what the weather's going to be like in your area. Her girlfriend, I mean, she had a sleepover. None of these girls could do this stuff because that people are learning how to write in 140 characters or less. So, like I said, to MGTOW Universe, or anybody else listening who's a millennial, you don't see the value in the process because you're living in a generation where you have knowledge but no context.
Mm-hmm.
You learn context through falling down and making a mistake. You're just getting the end products. But guess what? When you get out here in the rest of the world, there's going to be a fundamental disconnect between what your knowledge says and what my knowledge says. And you're hearing it right now when a simple concept about struggle and the power of perseverance and all that kind of stuff really is a confounding concept to you guys.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily their fault. It's the environment doesn't make them do it. So somebody has to actually force them to actually go back and get what they need. And I'm saying that, and that's decay. I'm not saying that they're wrong. It's not their fault because the environment's not making them do it.
Oh yeah, definitely not their fault.
Yeah.
You know, I could make that exact same argument for every single generation. Every single generation. And also, to go back to the original point, I said if people that lifted weights had a viable solution, not steroids, because bad things happen when you take steroids. If you had a solution where people can get the body that they want and they didn't have to worry about losing a kidney or getting a huge infection in their body, or if everything was just normal, you know, kind of like medicine without the bad shit happening to you, kind of like that, then your gyms would be.
But that's an example because
go ahead. Let me say this. You want to say a viable solution. Viable is in the eye of the beholder. To the people who use steroids, it is viable. To the people who microwave, it is viable. To someone who's trying to make a counter argument to what I'm saying, what BGS is saying, or hundreds and thousands of years of human history and lived experience is saying, your argument is extremely viable right now because you don't have the context.
That's why they have to go back and study ancient populations, to go back and relearn stuff that they didn't, because to solve problems that they're having because they don't understand how human beings work. So have to go back and say, well, how did they start out? How did they solve their problems 100,000 years ago?
Cocaine and morphine were viable to treat a toothache at the turn of the century. So was heroin. Coca-Cola had cocaine in it. Laudanum was used to treat feminine complaints. Look at all these turn of the century tonics and such and so forth. When people were looking for viable alternatives to just what they've had, their mom's a cure or nothing. Again, context. And the point I guess we're ultimately trying to get to is, if you think your way is better, or you think there's a better way, you said you could make a different argument. Guess what? Every person that dealt with the older generation at any time always thought they knew better or could make a counter argument
until you got older.
Right. and wait till you get in around, and then wait till you, because it's a funny thing. You can do it, but keep on living. That was my grandmother. Keep on living. And the older I get, the more right that old lady was with a 4th grade education out of Turkey Creek, Oklahoma.
Or maybe just sometimes the old people are wrong. Dead wrong.
Well, you know what? There's a difference between and maybe they're wrong, but there's also a respect that comes along with dealing with the elders, which is completely lost in your generation.
I can't speak. I can't speak for the rest of my generation. I like I said, I see the value in what BJS is saying. I'm just saying, like, in the world that moves as fast as ours now, that no other generation has had, we don't have to learn, and we don't have to go through the pain of not having, like you all did.
Do you know any people do you know any Chinese people? I mean,
no.
Personally, okay. China has a very old culture. I've dealt with the Chinese for decades. You know why China's kicking our butt? It's not just because of the technology, it's because of the culture. They respect things that they're inverse to us. The youth know to listen to the older people. The people with experience are given a certain amount of respect, authority, and face. You know, they drink warm water, we drink cold water. There's a lot but they have an intact culture that actually informs how they use knowledge. And there is never a situation where younger people, even with a good point, would speak with such bravado to elders who've lived it. That just would be an anathema to the way they're raised, because they have respect.
Yeah, that's like when I was in
How
my
did this become about respect? We were talking about completeness versus productivity. I'm just coming about respect.
Well, it all blends together, because you made the point where I could say something. I could make an argument where in another time where you made the argument about saying you could make the opposite argument. Then you say something about you could make an argument to where I forgot, actually. I'm sorry. I'm doing two or three things at a time.
What I'm saying is that knowledge and how knowledge is acquired, and how what we call basic knowledge, how things are actually put together, how they're formed. Quantum physics is not based on something new. It's based, actually, the equations for quantum physics are like 10,000 years old.
Okay.
But the thing is, the machinery that they have today, now that the technology can actually go out and prove it to themselves. In other words, okay, yeah, we found out that what these guys said 10,000 years ago was true.
Hey, BGS, I'm gonna drop off of this.
Okay, all right.
After we do our interview tonight.
Yeah, 6. Yeah. Tonight is 6. 6 o'clock Pacific time, 8 o'clock Central time. That would be 9 o'clock Eastern time. Yeah.
Right. So it'll be you and I talking about behind the scenes, and then after we do that part, I'm going to round it out about this persistence, grow, such and so forth, because apparently we need to have a much longer conversation so everyone can understand what
I'm saying. If you've never struggled at anything, if you never tried at anything, then you will never know. You will never reach your potential. A lot of millennials are satisfied with not reaching their potential. In other words, instead of cooking, put it in the microwave.
Yeah. And there's in psychology today. There's been a lot of research talking about how this generation is not going to ever really experience true happiness. They'll just live life content because of, and not your fault, but just because of a confluence of circumstances.
Yeah.
That good enough will be good enough.
Yeah, like I was saying, when I my daughter gets frustrated with my 5-year-old grandson when she's trying to teach him, because she doesn't understand that her being frustrated has to be worked through. In other words, that child is there to teach you patience. It's actually going to make you grow as a person. So in other words, when you hit a problem, you won't get all flustered. You won't get upset. You won't close down. You'll just, okay, I need to work through this. I've worked through this stuff before. I got to have some patience. We'll get through it. In other words, she doesn't want to take the same process I did with her. He's gone. If that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah. There's the value. They say, why do you struggle? Why do people struggle? Why do people struggle? They struggle to get through breakthroughs. And if you never struggle, you never know your potential. You never know what you could have done. And that's what we're losing.
People struggle because there's no better way of doing it. The moment a better way of doing it, the masses don't do the harder way.
why do people who can take a helicopter to the top of a mountain climb it?
Well, because they want the thrill of climbing it.
They
Not
want
because they have to.
no, the thrill of it is the struggle to see if I can.
Okay.
I test myself. That's why you run a marathon, even though you're not going to get paid for it. You're testing yourself.
Well, if you want to test yourself by going through, okay, fine.
And
but
they find out that actually the reason they test themselves, they put themselves through it because it actually carries through to the rest of their life.
Right, but they're doing that to simply test themselves, not to learn something.
There's a reason that they wanted women to play sports. The reason that they wanted women to play sports, because if you're doing gassers, you running these drills, you're damn near throwing up to play a game. But the thing is, what you learn from playing that game, going through that process, it's not even playing the game, it's going through the process. Running, practicing, perfecting. What you learn from it. Okay, this is how I learned to shoot a jump shot. This is how I learned to do a layup. This is what I had to do to get proficient.
Don Teasy once says, "Oh boy, just don't want to work hard. Just say it." You damn right, I don't want to work hard. You goddamn right, I don't want. Who wants to work hard? I want to work smart. That's what I want to work. I want to work the smartest way possible.
Well, how do you know what that is?
By researching
somebody else's experience, right?
Not well, it could be, but you could you just have to research on solutions, I guess you could say. Well, I'm talking about in terms of software. I'm not talking about in terms of mountain climbing and stuff like that.
Somebody else had to struggle, so you didn't have to.
Exactly. The dry principle.
So in other words, what happens when everybody stops struggling?
I don't know, BJS. I'm not even gonna pretend to know. I don't know. I don't know what happens. Either our society becomes completely automated or whatever.
That's how come China's kicking our ass right now. America's lost its mojo. They don't struggle. It's in fact, if you
don't think people struggle through school, going through grade school.
Most kids don't know what struggle is nowadays. Most of them don't.
Okay.
The only people that actually try to struggle through school are the people that are trying to get into an Ivy League school. Most kids don't. Like Kevin was saying. Give me the answer.
I'm sorry, say that again. Oh, yeah, give me the answer. Well, that's why I wasn't going to argue. I completely agree with you. Schools are about
give me the answer.
Grades. Yeah, it's not about educating people. It's about grades.
And that's the kind of people that we're turning out now.
Hasn't that always been that way?
Nope.
When did it change and why?
It changed. It changed with the boomers. Okay, because our parents had to struggle to put food on the table, and they had to go through that painful process. And as technology came in, a lot of parents, not me, but a lot of parents say that I don't want to put my kids through that because I struggled through school. It was hard for me, so I'm gonna make it easier for my kid.
Right.
And instead of saying, but the Asians have a different way, that's the way the process is done. And every generation has to struggle the same way to get to that same point. And Americans and Western people don't. I want to make it easier and easier and easier and easier and easier, and to the point where what's left. That's how come the Chinese civilization has been around for almost 6,000 years. And basically Western civilization that's been around for, the current iteration of Western civilization has only been around for 1,000, maybe. And so you can already start to see the slide. I'm not saying that, you know, this is a critique on our society. It's not necessarily about a generation. It's about a critique on the side. What is technology doing to us?
Well, it gets technology is getting more advances with each generation, right? So someone in the baby boomer generation will say, well, the younger generations are getting worse and worse because they have access to all this information, and we didn't.
In other words, this is the way a boomer thinks about millennials. This is the way we think about millennials. We're thinking that we always think, if I had this, what would I be doing? If I had this, you know, in other words, instead of the delayed childhood, okay, because I didn't believe it when one of my workmates told me this. He was talking about my children. I said I was frustrated because they weren't at the point where I thought they should be, right? Because at the time they were in their early 20s. And he said, man, you can't base where they are on us. You just can't. I said, why? He said, because they didn't have to struggle like we did. So their maturity level is going to be delayed. And at the time I didn't believe him. But now my son, you know, I'm having to reparent my children because they didn't struggle. Their mother didn't make them go through the process. So now I have to make them go through the process in their 20s and 30s, because that's what they didn't get in their when they were younger and when they were teens. They didn't go through that struggle. Now they still have to go through it. You know, I have to tell my daughter, who's damn near 30, when she's with with my grandson, put your smartphone down and actually interact with your kid. Because you're so indoctrinated, you're so brainwashed to be constantly online instead of actually interacting with your kid and giving your kid what their child needs, because you don't want to struggle with the kids. You want it easy. So you hand him a tablet or a smartphone to get him to shut up and leave you alone, instead of being a parent. And that's what I see in this generation. I see what the environment is causing. It's like I said, it's not their fault because the environment is doing that. Okay, it's if the kid is 2 and he wants my attention, instead of giving me my attention, I give him a tablet.
Yeah.
Instead of human interaction. What is that going to do to the kid when he gets 10, 15, 20? We don't know. Maybe the kids will be okay. We thought if we made it easier for our kids, that's a lot of that stuff. What boomers are saying is guilt, because what we should have done with our kids, we shouldn't have made it as easy. We should have made them struggle. And maybe a lot of things that are going on with millennials wouldn't be going on with millennials. In other words, we're saying they should be better than us, much better than us. They should be light years ahead of us, because the tools that they have to use, they should be light years ahead of us. So how come they're not? And that's what we're struggling with. It may not make sense, but that's what's going on in our minds, because we have the benefit of knowing how you guys were raised and what we actually did, and we're seeing that a lot of what we did was probably wrong. We should not have made it easy for you. We should have made you struggle to make you a stronger people, not just stronger, more on what we think is productive.
That would have been extremely hard to do in a technologically advanced society.
China does it all the time. It's culture.
Can you give me an example? Like I see a lot of Chinese using technology just like we do. I don't understand.
You know how many hours? In fact, if you look at Asians, period, the Asian culture, even today, you know how many hours an Asian today even studies now?
I have no idea.
They study, just homework. They do at least 5 or 6 hours homework a day. Coming to the time they were 3 years old. In other words, they leverage the technology. Okay, this can help my kid learn more. So in other words, you still have to put in the same amount of hours, but the thing is, you should be better because you have access to more. I can actually teach you more. I can put more into you. Whereas Americans get to the point where, okay, well, then they don't really have to read a whole lot, so we're gonna cut the homework ratio down from like 5 hours to 6 hours. You can cut it down to 1 or 2. That's educated enough. They don't really have to use that stuff. And it starts to decay. So in other words, if we made it real easy for you guys, and then when the millennials have kids, guess what they're gonna do to their kids? They're gonna make it even easier. So in other words, the problem is not stabilizing, it's actually gonna make it worse, because how are those kids gonna turn out?
But if like, let's say China, for example, and again, I don't know enough about, I don't know hardly anything about this, but like a few generations down the road, like if you're gonna teach your kids from the source, that'll just bog down the time because it's still only 24 hours in a day.
At some
point, if you're gonna teach them all these skills that you learn all these generations simply for the sake of gaining grit or whatever, you're taking time away from them being productive. Now you're hoping that pays off in the long run, but what if it doesn't? And you just end up bogging them down with things that they're just not going to use in a new society.
Well, you guys, we already learned that with you. Okay, with you guys, we already learned that. Okay, we learned that lesson pretty quickly. We need to actually make these kids struggle, because it's about them learning how to struggle, learning how to learn. That learning is not always easy. In fact, my ex, man, she I learned what not to do with my children. What not to do with my children. So my grandson is actually going back to the old way, where you have to struggle with your material. Like I'll give you a quick example, because I don't want to hold you too long. He was 3. He's like 3.5. He's going to preschool, and it's an advanced private school. So they're teaching him how to write. Okay, how to write, how to make the letters, how to write. And you know how the little dots, the little tracing dots that they do to teach kids how to write? I don't know if you remember that, but they're tracing dots where they connect the dots and you learn how to form the letters, and on and on and on and on, right? And he's a very bright kid. Okay, he's an extremely bright kid, and he wanted to make it easy. So he didn't learn how to form the letters. What he did is said, okay, if I just connect these dots, I'll get the answer, and the teacher will be happy.
Well, that's a standard where you're just cranking out kids and grades. I mean, we've already know that schools are not educated people.
What I'm saying is you had to go out and struggle with your material on your own.
Yes, in a time where I had no choice to do so. Yes.
Yeah. What I'm saying is that's the process. It probably still is the process.
That's where we disagree.
You have more access to the information. The information can come to you, but you still gotta go through the process. You have greater access, so the programmers coming after you should be better. Because the tools that they have and the access they have to actually learn, that they put in the same amount of time, it should be more productive.
Right. And they are. They have better tools. They have better tools. They have better tools than what I had in 1998.
Yeah.
I mean, you can write a 1,000,000-line program in like a few days, as to where it took like 6 months to a year, like 20 years ago.
Well, yeah, you're piecing it together. You're not writing it.
Right. Well, I mean, yeah, okay. I guess you could say that.
And you don't learn it. You don't really learn it intrinsically, because you didn't write it yourself. So you can say that about. You can say that about every generation of programmers since from like the 50s, unless you're programming from like the 50s. If you created every single library, could you imagine how productive an average programmer would have to be if they had to create they had to create the architecture themselves and every single library for the sake of struggle? If every kid, I'll tell you what, If every kid learn how to create architectures, if every kid learn how to create architectures and libraries and all that kind of stuff, you'd have 1 million Linus Torvalds creating Linux.
Hold on. Are you talking about software libraries?
Yeah. If they knew how to do it from scratch.
So you're going to teach. So you're going to teach. When do you plan on starting this teaching? When do you plan on starting this teaching? When
would I start?
Yeah, like when you said these kids will learn. When would you start?
What I'm saying, if it were up to me,
yeah,
they start about 6.
Okay, so at 6, to even get before you even start writing libraries, you have to learn the process of architecture. That means learning assembly, which means learning binary, which means you have to also learn electrical engineering, which means you also have to learn physics. And yes, you do. Before you even get to the libraries, you have to learn all of that stuff.
In other words, in other words, you would take it step by step. You wouldn't give a 6-year-old all that. You give them simple. You give them simple. You give them simple routines, right? Variables and that kind of stuff, just as simply as you could. And as they progress, by the time they get to 15, 16 years old, then you start giving them that as they are age appropriate.
So you would move from code and move down to physics.
I would move down to physics because you've already learned that. But the thing is, you still learned it. You're just going deeper and deeper and deeper to the time you get to be 15, 16 years old. Then you be Linus Torvald. You can actually You can actually write a whole architecture by yourself if you wanted to. And if we had 1 million of those guys, what would software look like?
I don't know. If they're writing their own architecture, they're wasting time writing their own architecture.
In other words, you had many 1 million of those guys that could. What would your software look like?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, because software, as I said, software has always been shit, no matter what the architecture has been.
If you had 1 million Linus Torvalds that could create like that,
we assumed that it would be better. But as I've said, like the brightest software engineers, their software is still shit. Because the platform that they're creating it on is shit.
But there's levels of stinkiness to shit.
That is true. That is true. Yes. That is true.
Hopefully, it's closer to human shit than horse shit or bullshit.
I agree with that.
or whale poop or whatever you want to call it, however the lowest level it would be.
I would love to see a whole generation of Linus Torvalds.
What I'm saying, if we don't take these kids through the struggle, you'll never have them, or you won't have the ones that you need. China started these kids at 6.
Could you even sell that to China?
Huh?
Starting them with code with 6 and moving down to.
They do. Oh yeah. That's the way they do it.
Okay.
That's the way they do it. I mean, if you were teaching a kid to read, would you start with War and Peace?
No,
because they don't have the ability to understand it, right?
I don't know who War and Peace is, but I would start them off with something.
Okay, all right, okay. War and Peace is a book, famous book written by Tolstoy.
Okay.
I
wouldn't start them off on some advanced like that.
It's like 1,200 pages long.
Okay.
And very advanced language. Would you start a 6-year-old with War and Peace?
No.
So you couldn't start a 6-year-old with physics, right?
No, not most kids. No.
First of all, you have to teach them mathematics first before you even get to physics. Again, very different. You can understand some of the principles of physics without mathematics, but to understand physics, you need math.
You know how I feel about abstractions, but okay.
you can.
We're not going to agree. We're not going to agree on that. I think I really do think it's a generational thing.
No, the thing is, it's an age thing. Okay.
Same difference, right?
No, 10 years, you understand what I'm talking about.
Oh, here we go. I got to be able to understand.
No. Okay. How can you if you've raised children, do you understand people better?
I
Or
do not
should,
have children, so I have
yeah.
no idea.
And you have no idea. I can tell you, yes, you do.
How so?
Because you had to actually make one. You had to raise one from scratch. And you see, in other words, the thing I say about children, and a lot of people with children actually know this, especially if they raise their own children. They're your mirrors. They're you. And a lot of things you didn't understand about you because you didn't, when you're growing up, you didn't have the capacity to understand you. But if you raise the children from the time it's born, you said, "Oh, okay, okay, that child is helpless. Okay, I had to teach it how to speak. I had to teach it how to write. I had to relearn all the stuff that I've forgotten because now I have to teach it to somebody else." Like my daughter, she forgot how she learned to read with phonics, even though we took her to 3-4 years of phonics. She had to recall all that stuff. She didn't remember it. She had forgotten until she had to do what? Teach her son. Oh yeah, I remember when I had to do this.
Right.
Oh yeah, I remember when I had that's how I learned to do math with the counting dots. Oh yeah, that's how I learned how to count money. Then you start understanding how you were formed and understand how that child is formed, how you were formed. Then you understand, okay, human beings have a similar experience if you pay attention to the lesson. Because you have to grow a child, you have to grow a human being from the time it's born, coming out of the womb, to the time it's an adult. So you have a deeper understanding of human beings because you had to actually roll your own, for lack of a better term.
Okay.
Same thing with how BGS. How do you understand women so much? Okay, number one, I raised 2 daughters. Number two, I worked around women for, still do, but work, 30 some odd years. Trial and error, experience, something that you can't learn. If you've never heard the other side of the conversation, you can't learn. And if you haven't seen those lessons repeated, then you don't understand it. There's learning for the test, and there's understanding. And understanding, then you can actually extrapolate out. Okay, this is the way human beings work. This is the way my daughters were raised. This is how they responded when they were 3, 4, 5, 6 as little girls, and then when they turned puberty, this is how they respond. Oh yeah, I remember little girls used to do that when I was a kid. And then I talked to my other friends, their daughters do the exact same thing. So you start mashing things up. And you get an understanding of how people work, how men work. I didn't understand men till I had to coach boys. When I had to actually coach little boys how to play basketball, believe it or not, how to play basketball, I had to learn how to teach them the game. But teaching them the game, I had to figure out how they learned. What they can pick up at what age. You can't teach it's very difficult to teach a 3-year-old a crossover dribble. His body's not strong. Number one, the ball's too big. He's not strong enough. Unless he's really gifted at it, which most kids aren't. They have to grow into it. You learn that. You learn that kind of stuff. You learn what boys respond to. If you learn how boys respond to leadership, to commands, to direction, then you extrapolate to men, because all men are grown up little boys. That's how they're socialized. So you understand how men work. Same way. But that takes time, that takes experience. You can't gain that, you can't gain it until you understand yourself. You don't realize that you haven't understood yourself till you're just starting to peek out and understand yourself at 30. Just starting to peek out. Oh, okay. I look back at 20 and say, oh, okay, I wish I'd have known this then. But you can't know it then because you're not in that place. Like when I was 22, I had a girlfriend that's 20 years older than me. And a lot of shit she said didn't make sense. A lot of shit I understood it kind of as an abstraction layer, kind of understood it a little bit. I knew what she was talking about, but I didn't understand it because I hadn't gone through it. So when I got to be 42, okay, I understand, because now I've raised kids. I've had more relationships, and I've gotten older, and all those lessons have come home. Now I understand it, because now I'm at that place where I can, because my body, my mind, my body, and everything else is in that space. Now I understand what she was talking about. You can't understand it till you get there, because you can't. Your body, a 20-year-old can't understand what a 50-year-old goes through, because your body's 20 years old. Okay, at 20 years old, you can run all day. You can do crazy shit with your body and not get hurt. At 50, you can't do that shit. Okay, because your body's your environment, your body's telling you that you can't. So when you get 50, now I understand what 50-year-olds meant. So in other words, some things you can experience vicariously, and some things you have to go through. And that's the difference. And then you look back, I understand what he said. Okay, most guys can't really can't get control of their dick and get control of women until they get 35, because testosterone is a drug. It keeps pushing you. Most guys, I'm not saying all, most guys. All of a sudden, when you get to 35, all of a sudden testosterone kind of dip a little bit. Your brain can function without all that that drug pushing you to reproduce. He said, I can say no. Most guys can't understand it, because your worldview is not the same. It can't be the same, because you haven't accumulated enough experience and enough knowledge. You can't program a kid with a chip to be an old man. There's a difference between knowledge and wisdom. Knowledge is information. Wisdom is understanding. When you bring the two together, that's wisdom. And you have to experience it. For to be a good programmer, you have to struggle. You have to struggle with debugging. You have to struggle with solving a problem. You have to struggle. Most people don't want to struggle anymore. Give me the answer. Hand it to me. Read the book and digest it for me. I cannot digest an 1,100-page book for you. You can't. It's not possible. You got to digest it for yourself.
Couldn't we say that reading a book is also getting an answer handed to you? It's the same thing as asking someone. It's just in written form.
Because when you read a book, the answers don't get handed to you. Okay, you have to pick the answers out, because you're reading a 1,100-page book. What questions are you asking? And that the question that you're asking may not be in that book.
That's true.
And if you read it, like I say, if you read a book like Tragedy and Hope, it answered a lot of questions. And as reading through the book, it answered a lot of questions that would come after, because I read it, because it correlates with other books. Because that book might not answer it deeply, but they give you a term, which is why I love Google. It gives you a term. Okay, I don't understand what they mean by that particular gold standard. I don't understand what that means, because he gives you an outline of it. But now, but the answer to it, understanding it, is too deep for a book. Otherwise, the book would be 1,000,000 pages long. You had to go find other references. So I had to read other stuff, other books, other blogs, what other people say, and start accumulating the understanding of how the goal system works. And it's not in one book. Like my teacher used to say, you got to bring books to the book. One book can't do it.
Would you say that people are being lazy if they just Google search for an answer?
You get a answer, but will it be complete? Will it lead to understanding?
I don't know what do you mean by complete?
In other words, you Google something, you hit a search term. How many search layers do you go deep? 1, 2, 3, what?
It depends on the question and what answer you're looking for.
So in other words, most people go to Wikipedia and they stop.
Right.
And they'll copy and paste Wikipedia. And I asked them, well, okay, what does that mean? Okay, you gave me the answer. What does it mean? Well, it means what it means. I said, okay. Did you go to the footnotes and look up the references and see where it came from and get an understanding of where it came from? Well, no. Well, how do you know that what you're saying, the person that's regurgitating the answer is correct, or has a proper interpretation of the answer?
Right. Right.
In other words, it has to be a trusted source, which is why newspapers are important.
Yeah, but newspapers have also had issues with being trusted sources as well.
I know. Do you trust a newspaper that's been around 100 years, or do you trust a blog that's been around for 6 months?
That blog could be right and the newspaper could be wrong. That's possible also.
In other words, you have to vet the blog for yourself, right?
I hate the and I agree with you, but the problem is that you have to do a coin flip based on who's been around longer, pretty much.
No, well, you have to. In other words, if you don't want to, the reason that you go with certain brands, okay, you like Apple or Samsung or something like that, rather than the knockoff Chinese brand, is because what?
Well,
it has a reputation, right?
It does have a reputation, but all of it is made in the same country, though, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, well, yes, it does. Yes, it does. If you know anything about the Chinese, the quality will vary. Okay, there's cheap knockoffs where you don't the software is not quite right. It's got more bugs. It's got different issues, stuff like that. If somebody hasn't vetted that particular machine and that brand, then you're taking a risk. Whereas Samsung, Apple, and those kind of people have a brand to do what? To defend. So they send out shitty. They're gonna lose a whole lot of money if they send out shitty products, right?
Right. But the internals of the computers, they're pretty much the same as the internals of other computers. They don't even Apple doesn't really even make their own hardware anymore. They use Intel processors.
Yeah, but I'm saying is what's the biggest thing about manufacturing stuff? What is a huge thing? It's not just manufacturing, but what?
It's quality, right?
Quality control.
Right.
And you're paying for quality control. A lot of stuff. In fact, a lot of Apples and Samsungs cast-offs go into what? Where they don't just go into a destroyed bin. Where do they go? They go into.
They get refurbished.
They go into other machines.
Right.
So you get an inferior quality. And if they found that, in fact, other places have found that out. That in fact, the Chinese. China. There was one while Chinese didn't want to buy anything that was headed for the Chinese market. They wanted they always preferred something that was sold to the external market. You know why?
Why?
The quality control was better.
Yeah.
Chinese didn't mind dumping the shit into their own market because they didn't have to worry about their reputation. But outside of China, the companies had to worry about their reputation.
So here's a question. So like if you're doing research, and let's say you have 50 sources and one of those sources, they all have different answers. Like, are you going to do just a 50-way coin toss on who's been around and who's more reputable? Because they could be just
you're talking about me? How I read?
Yeah, just an example. Yeah.
How
I guess you could use. Yeah, I guess you could do that. Yeah.
Okay. How I do it? Okay. How I do it to be accurate? Okay. What I do is I would take 50 different sources and I would actually research 50 different sources over 6 months and see who's right most often. but that takes work. Most people aren't going to do that.
What do you mean by see who's right?
In other words,
I know you talk about dig deeper, but explain like.
Okay. If 50 people give an analysis on a particular problem, whatever it is, whether gold is going to go up or down, Bitcoin is going to go up or down, on and on and on, something like that, right?
Right.
Okay. At first, anybody could be right. Well, a month later, then you know that half of those guys are going in the wrong direction. 6 months later, you know, there's only about 5 or 6 sources that are actually right most often and have the best information and know what they're talking about in a given discipline. And those are the 5, 6 sources that I've vetted for myself.
Okay.
I have to do the vetting. In other words, either you trust somebody or you have to do the vetting. Just like if I bought knockoff smartphones, right?
Right.
How many I could get lucky in the first one that works beautifully. But more than likely, I have to go through like 10 or 15 of them if they're knockoffs to find one brand that's consistently works the way it's supposed to work or good. And then I have vetted that particular brand, but that takes work. So in other words, most people don't want to go through that work or that process of vetting because it's time consuming. They have to go to what? A trusted source, because more than likely their information will be pretty close to being accurate. Every now and then you're going to get the fake news or whatnot. But 90% of the time, it's going to be fairly accurate because they have a reputation to defend. If you get caught lying 90% of the time, you won't be in business. And it's all, especially on the internet now, everybody's going to back check everything that you do. And I was
what if a reputable source has been they've been reputable and trustworthy for, I don't know, let's say 50 years, for example, and they get caught lying once, are they no longer reputable?
Oh, well, you have to take the weight of the evidence. Did they print a retraction? Could they be wrong? Yes. If they get caught lying once, their image is going to take a hit. So in other words, if you're going to lie, you try not to get caught lying.
Yeah.
Whereas somebody that writes a blog, what do they have to protect?
But they have to protect themselves also.
Not really. You know what? They don't have a 100-year-old reputation and people looking over their shoulders.
But they still have a reputation to protect, though, if they care about their reputation.
How do you know they care about their reputation?
I don't know they don't care about their reputation, but I don't know that they don't care about their reputation either. So
in other words, you have to vet these guys, right?
That's true. Yeah.
You have to take the time to vet them, right?
You do.
Yeah.
You do.
So you can vet them, and I've vetted a lot of sources, like Asia Times Online. I never heard of it, but over time I vetted them, and they had a lot of information that most people didn't have. I've been using them for good luck. I started using them in 2005, 12 years.
Okay, so when you're doing the vetting process, like, what is your thought process? Like, if to go from untrustworthy source to trustworthy, like, what would you look for, and how much of it would they need? I guess I'm asking you, how do you quantify trustworthiness in your sources?
Oh, it's basically a scoreboard. Are they right over time?
Okay.
In other words, that's what I'm saying. If they say something, and I'm saying if they publish every day or every week or however they publish, right? And say if they come out with a blog like every other day, and I read the blog consistently for 6 months, and they tend to be right more often than not. Like for my threshold is like at least 80% of the time. Everybody can be wrong. Whereas some blogs are just, or some sources are completely wrong. Like you can blow them out within a month. It's like, okay, dude, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about because you've been wrong like 80% of the time. And then you keep moving on, keep filtering down to the point where you have a few trusted sources, and only within a particular discipline. Like I would never trust RT to actually be truthful about what Russia's doing, but they are going to be truthful about what US is doing, and vice versa. There's some trusted sort, like Wall Street Journal, 80% of the time they're correct because they have to be. Pay a lot of money for the Wall Street Journal. They can't afford to be wrong 90% of the time. Otherwise, that $300 a year subscription that they charge people wouldn't pay for it.
That can't be like when their information is not like stock information or anything like that, right?
What I'm saying is more than stock information. Business moves on more than just stock information.
Well, I'm just talking about, like, are they doing like making predictions, or is it just news based on Wall Street?
You're basically, they have to have analysis because that's what you're paying for. Are they? Okay. Are the articles that they're publishing pertinent and timely? That's what you're looking for. In other words, when I drop an article, when I drop a video, as far as on my channel, I try to, I already have a timeline and an architecture, right? A frame. So when I drop a video, I said, okay, I've already read the break. I call them breadcrumbs. Enough breadcrumbs have dropped to where it's going to give a direction. Okay, now let me backtrack and find an articles that actually point people toward that direction so they can get a jump on it.
Got a question.
Yes, sir.
Last question. I promise. So if let's say if a trader, is that you on your side?
Could be.
Okay, so
if everybody's muted up.
Okay, so if a trader is wrong 80%, but his analysis is spot on, is he a trustworthy source?
If his analysis is spot on, and you,
but the market just doesn't move the way his analysis go on.
Okay, if his analysis is spot on, you'll be able to tell. Okay, what part of his analysis was right?
Okay.
Now his trading recommendations might be shit. Okay, but his reading of the market could be right. That's possible. Not normally. That doesn't normally happen, but his reading of the chart could be right. His just trading strategy is probably shit. He's losing because he didn't apply it. A lot of people are now analyze and don't apply the shit correctly. So you pick the pieces that are correct. So he can't be a trusted source because he's always been spot on about his analysis. So you said, okay, I know Joe is always right about this. So if something pops up, let me go to Joe.
Okay. Okay.
Because you've already vetted the dude. What I'm saying is that if you're not going to spend, most people don't spend time vetting their information.
Right. That's true.
So you have to go with a trusted source because you don't have time to do what vet it. So how come you buy an iPhone or Samsung? Because they don't have time to try 50 different phones. I want something that works. I know will work, has worked in the past. That's the brand. That's the reputation that you're buying. You're not buying just a phone. You're buying the brand, reputation, quality control, all the stuff that goes on in between that you trust. It's a trusted source.
Yeah.
Which is the difference. So a blog, and I gotta remember, man, I've been online since 300 baud modems. Okay. And I've been reading blogs for damn near 30 years. And you learn how to filter out bullshit, but you have to bring other things to bear. You have to have some kind of knowledge in that particular field. So now when they recommend a book, not always, but you try to at least look at the book, look at the synopsis of the books. Will that enhance what I know? Like when I recommend a book, because I've vetted the book, I've used the information in the book, and I give you, say, read this, go through this, because it's going to open up your worldview. But you got to read it. I mean, I can't, you know, I would love to the 20 or 30 books that I would change people's worldview. I would love to go through it online, but it would be tedious. And most people aren't going to even look at the shit anyway. Yeah. But the ones that do, just like the Lucifer principle, the ones that actually follow along with my information, their worldview grows. How many people are actually going to sit through, even though I'm breaking it down for them, how many people are actually going to sit through it and listen to me and go through it line by line? They're not. They're not going to struggle with it. They're not going to go try to apply it.
And I bet you all of them are not millennials.
Hmm?
As in, I bet you all of them are not millennials.
No, they're not. But millennials have it worse. Trust. Oh man. Ugh.
Would you embrace a technology where you can learn things instantly, or no?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd embrace it. It just enhances what I already have. Okay. Because I've already struggled. Like it used to kill me. It still kills me. Because I've been doing it so long, I can search and find things that people miss or can't. And I've seen that so many times. Dude, I can't find what you're looking for. Dude, I said I found it in 5 minutes. And I found it in 5 minutes. Sometimes I search a term. Sometimes I just use Google Images because I can read charts. And I go through a bunch of charts visually to see what I'm looking for. And said, okay, this chart is giving me sort of what I'm looking for. Let me find the underlying information. I hit the button, which is good because I had to go to the library. It pulls up the blog. I read through that. If it has references, I go through that, keep pulling strings until I understand what I'm looking for. And I go to other information. It makes it faster. Yeah. So I can do more. And I'm not trying to make it easy, but I can do more. But the process is still the same. So because I've been doing it so long with the experience and I've struggled with my material, I can actually find things and pick things out of text that people don't even, they read it, they don't realize what they've read. I can pick it out and expound upon it. But it takes experience and takes struggle. Answer can be in front of you. You just don't notice it.
Yeah, that's true too.
Yeah. If you don't, I've learned with math, if it's not in your head, you won't recognize the pattern.
We disagree upon that. But we already had that discussion. We'll be here for another 4 hours.
Yeah. I guarantee you, because I've done it for myself. And in fact, I've tested it on my children.
Well, BJS, everyone is different.
Yeah, there's always an outlier, is there not?
Maybe I'm an outlier because I've never had that. Never had that. Well, I won't say never. I won't say never. Never say never.
Okay. But, okay. Go back. When did you start programming?
1998.
Okay, 20 years ago, right?
Yes.
Okay, with that experience, do you recognize problems faster because you had 20 years experience?
Yes. But I didn't have the luxury of learning. I didn't have the luxury of having the technology that we have today.
That's the excuse.
That's the what?
That's the excuse.
How is that an excuse?
In other words, in other words, you can't prove that because you've already went through the struggle, right? You can't.
No, I can't. You're right. I can't prove it, but I know. But I know that if I use,
you think you can't prove that.
Yes, I do know because the exact concepts I was struggling on was already been abstracted out in Python. I know that for a fact.
Yeah,
so I wasn't struggling. I didn't struggle with C++ until I got to pointers and classes.
Mm-hmm.
So those things are solved now. Those have been abstracted out. So the things that I struggled back then, I would not have struggled now, considering all things being.
You know what an extraction layer is? It means that the underlying technology has been covered up. It's not visible.
Right.
Like instead of We have WYSIWYG, which is
what you see is what you get.
Well, what you get. That's an extraction layer.
Yes, it is.
Back in the day, we didn't have that. We actually
neither did I.
Yeah. So in other words, you know what's underneath the WYSIWYG, right?
No, not necessarily. Well,
yes,
it depends.
Yeah,
it depends.
Pretty much. You know, there's code underneath there.
Right. But okay. I see where you're going, but okay.
See where I'm going? Yeah. Yeah. Even though you know it's easier to do it this way, you know what's underneath. What's underneath the hood. Like I don't have to know how to fix an engine to drive a car. It's been extracted out. But the engine is still underneath the hood, is it not?
Yes, it is.
So if something goes wrong, something goes wrong, I get a mechanic who does know what's under the hood.
Hopefully he does, but yes.
Yeah, hopefully he does. That's true. Because you have to vet your mechanics. See what I mean?
That's true. That's true. You do.
See what I mean? See what I mean?
Because someone will say they know what they're doing and they don't.
Yeah, exactly. See what I mean?
Yeah.
You're making my point.
No, you're making a different point. My point has always been in this entire discussion.
You're making my own. You're making my point.
The point of what? That you have. What's the point? The completeness.
Completeness.
Well, your point would be
you never get completely to infinity, do you?
No, you don't.
In other words, but you have to strive toward it.
No, you don't have to. You don't have to. I completely disagree with that.
And that, my friend, is the difference between boomers and millennials.
You telling me that baby boomers strive to completeness?
They try to.
You're on the record saying that, really?
The ones going for mastery, they try to.
Okay.
I mean, in other words, they know that they've given up. They know they should. Okay, they should do it, and they recognize that they should do. Baby boom. I mean, millennial said, I ain't got to.
Well, it depends on what. If you're going for completeness, I completely agree with you. I have never disagreed with that. I am saying that to be productive in the 21st century, you do not need completeness to be efficient. You do not need completeness to be highly productive. That is my argument.
No, because the machines are doing it for you.
You are correct.
So you're losing knowledge and abilities, but for the machines doing it for you. Yeah.
Yes, you are losing. Yes, you are losing those underlying layers. So now you have to ask yourself, is that important to me, or is that important to my job, or is it not? And if it is, then okay, I encourage you for completeness. But if you're just doing a job and you don't care about completeness, then no.
And when that bleeds over into every other part of your life.
I disagree with that. It could. I could see how it could, but again, I don't believe.
You don't believe, man. I see it every day. Kevin was just talking about it. We see it every day. It's like, dude,
okay, but
it's like, dude, I mean, it's just a bump. Don't worry, get up. But it's too hard. It's not too hard. You haven't tried yet. Well, I did try. No, you haven't. You haven't tried.
Well, I don't know.
And that's the decay in society, and the next generation is going to be even worse until it actually fails, and then they have to rebuild it. Yeah, it probably has to go to failure, which is something that my generation hoped that it wouldn't have to.
JJ Redwood, he's been getting on my case for the last 2 hours. He said, but MGTOW Universe is using this completeness argument to avoid reading at all. Yeah.
I'm
not.
You do read, though. I'm sure you read.
I do. Of course I read.
Yeah.
But I said I look forward to the day where nobody has to read. You can learn anything you want on demand instantly. And who in their right mind is going to say, oh, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do it the old-fashioned way because it builds character.
And then, well, it does build character, believe it or not. It does.
Yeah, but who's going to use up all of that time just to do that? We just simply, there's better things to do that can build the exact same character.
Like what?
I don't know. We're talking about this theoretical future.
No. Like what?
Solving new problems.
Like what?
I have no idea,
solving new problems are based on what's been done before.
You're correct, but why are we recreating the wheel when it's already been created? We're just wasting time.
You're learning how the wheel. You're learning how the wheel was created to build a better wheel.
But why are we creating a better wheel when we don't need a better wheel?
How do you know you don't?
How do you know you do?
Because the problem in front of you says you do.
Well, if you do, then yes, you would need to know how the wheels work and gain some insight. I have not disagreed with that either.
And learning how to build a better wheel actually translate to other things. Like
maybe it does. I can't speak for everyone.
Okay, if you know how to build a better wheel, you know how to build a better ball bearing.
Okay.
They can be used for something else, like gyros, like miniature gyros and stuff like that.
What is a gyro again? I've heard of it, but what does it mean?
The gyroscope is how when you tilt your phone, it's a miniature gyroscope.
Okay.
In your phone.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Gotcha.
When you tilt, it gravity tells you when it's sideways, up, down, whatever. Right. That's a miniature.
Right. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Your stabilizers and all that kind of stuff. Your smartphone has just shrunk it down to the point where it's not like old gyros used to be like maybe the size of your hand, and they shrunk it down to the point where you actually put it into a smartphone. It's a miniature gyro.
Okay.
But if you know how the wheel works, you know how to make one of those things, or how they work, or how they function.
Maybe there's a little bit more to it than just going from the wheel to instantly to the gyro.
What I'm saying is, if you understand how the wheel was made and how it
you'll get some insight on how the gyro works.
Yes.
Okay, I get that, but I'm not okay. I'm not disagreeing with that, but it's just most people don't need completeness to be efficient in these days, or to have grit. Now,
okay.
your opinion is that
how do you develop grit?
By hacking away the problem and not giving up, in my opinion.
By struggling.
Yeah.
Whether it's in basketball, whether it's lifting weights, whether it's running a marathon, breaking through a barrier. In fact, that's what that's how come we have all these doggone motivational coaches trying to push you through the process that the old environment would actually do. In other words, you're still working on old hardware. Your biological hardware hasn't changed. It still needs what it needs.
Yes, but I think we're in a point of time where we don't need to. Of course, you have to struggle to solve new problems. Of course, that's going to happen. But I don't think we need to struggle to learn. I think for the most part, we're past that. We're out of that woods.
You're referencing. You're not learning.
You're learning by referencing.
No, you're referencing. You're not learning.
You're telling me if you don't reference something 10 times or 100 times, you're not going to know what the hell it is.
You basically you're doing what you're learning. If you're referencing something 100 times, it's the same thing over and over and over again.
That's learning.
If you have to reference it 100 times,
well, I'm just using that as an example.
Okay, if you have to reference it 100 times, you didn't learn it the first time, did you?
Well, if you reference something one time, then I guess you could say you have a photographic memory. But I just used the number 100 as just an arbitrary number. I would hope somebody wouldn't have to reference something 100 times. But that's just me.
Without learning it, right?
Exactly. Without learning it.
You see it all the time. What do you miss? You're missing stuff. You're missing understanding. You're dropping stuff out, and you don't know what's important and what's not. And if you never struggle, you never go through a barrier, you never push yourself, then when you have to push yourself over something that there's a barrier that you can't get around, whether it's in on your job, learning something, in a relationship, in life, whatever it is, if you never struggled, then you have to learn how to struggle. And to the psyche, it's the same. If you I remember my breakthrough was when I finally learned calculus. And since I made a breakthrough, I was able to teach my brother who's struggling in I think he was struggling in anatomy at the time. And I didn't know anything about anatomy because I never studied it, but I know the struggle and how to learn. So he was struggling. He was actually failing. I mean, failing to the point where he was going to have to drop out of the class and take it over. I said, do you want to struggle through this class and see if you can pass it, or you want to just fail and try it again and try the struggle all over again? He said he wanted to get through it. I said, you're going to have to struggle through this material for a minute, learn the process until you can actually do it yourself. So I took what I learned from calculus and how I learned and what got me through the struggle. I taught him that. Within a couple of weeks, using the process, he went from failing all his exams to getting A's in his exams. And his teacher walked up and said, "What did you do? What did you change?" Instead of looking for the answer, you went through I made the process more important than the answer. That's what a lot of people don't understand. The process is more important than the answer.
I disagree. Okay.
I read right in front of my trigonometry book that I had, older trigonometry book. It says the answer is not as important as the definitions in the formulas. If you memorize those first, because that's where the struggle is actually blocking those in your mind so you can recognize the pattern. That's what it said.
TM Goldie says the non-lazy millennial apologist for lazy millennials trying to keep the competition to a minimum.
They're going in on her. Is that on? That's on mine, not yours. Okay.
Yeah, that's on yours.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to hear arguments. I don't want to hear like insults.
No. Well,
arguments.
Well, that's That's how come I didn't want to open it up like that.
No, I don't mind. I don't mind the insults. If I have no problem admitting that, yeah, I want a world that can be referenced instead of one where people are wasting their time. And yes, I do see it as a waste, referencing old problems that's been solved just to build grit when there's other ways of building grit.
Oh, okay. What are the other ways?
Well, we've been through this already.
No.
Solving problems, but I think that learning them, when you solve new problems, you're going to go through struggle.
Okay.
But when you're learning, no.
So if you're solving a new problem, you're solving a new problem. You need a new insight. Where do you get it from?
You get it from the past, from people that's already done it.
Oh,
I've already said that. What are you talking about?
Yeah. What do you have to do that?
You have to read up on it. You have to learn
read up on it. Yeah, you got to read up on it.
I'm not disagreeing with that. I've never said anything otherwise.
So in other words, you're taking yourself through the struggle.
If you want to call that a struggle, okay. I mean, I wouldn't call that a struggle. You're just doing research. If you want to call research struggling, all right.
In other words, you're a programmer. Have you ever had what they call a head banger?
Well, problem that was extremely difficult. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
How do you get through it?
I did research.
A lot of research.
Yes.
A lot of trial and error.
Yes.
Bingo. Did it make the next problem?
If you want to call that a struggle, I don't see that as a struggle. I just see that as just learning. I mean, if you want to call that a struggle, okay, we're arguing semantics. Okay, fine, it's a struggle.
At the time, was it a struggle?
Yes, it was, because we didn't have Stack Overflow and we didn't have Google, and all I had was just me. It wasn't Yahoo even search. Yahoo search wasn't even popping. So it was just me and my developer reference manual. That's in 1998. Today, I could just go on Stack Overflow and just ask, and someone will answer it.
So, in other words, you won't struggle. You don't struggle. You don't learn how to overcome that problem. Did that headbanger teach you something?
Yeah, it taught me that C++ sucks, and I hate my compiler.
You may hate, but yes, everybody hates their compiler. Even today, your compiler is still shit, is it not?
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is. Compilers were shit when I was coming up in the 80s.
It's shinier shit.
It's just shinier shit. More advanced, complex shit. Because the programs you need to build are more complex. So you have bigger headbangers when they go wrong.
Yeah, that's true.
You got more shit to dig through. But yet, but the thing is, you don't. If you don't want to struggle, you never solve that problem. You got to have the fortitude to actually muscle through it, right?
Actually, no. If you want to solve that problem, you go on Stack Overflow. You ask the question, and someone will answer it.
And then you have to. And sometimes they can, and sometimes
no. Sometimes they always do, because it's usually like a few thousand people on a certain forum cracking away at the problem if they don't know it already. Yeah. That's the advancement. I wish I had StackOverflow.com back in 1998 to prevent me from struggling when I had no choice.
In other words, you struggling. and then that my dear brother is the difference. What I'm talking about.
You want to struggle? I don't want to struggle. No, I want to solve new problems. I don't want to resolve old ones.
You're not really solving the problem. You're asking somebody to solve it for you.
Well, it doesn't. If it's a solution, yeah, give me an answer. I mean, the point, like, I don't care,
But you've already. Well, the thing is, you've already done the work. Most people haven't.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, programming languages. I am jealous of Python and JavaScript developers because they didn't have to go through my struggle, but they have their own struggles.
They have their own struggles. Yeah. Yeah, because there's limits to Python and there's limits to Java.
Java and JavaScript.
And a lot of times, I mean, I can't tell you. Well, back in the day, I keep saying back in the day, the reason that a lot of Java got fixed, Python got fixed, is because they had very good C programmers that come in and actually solve those problems.
Okay.
Because there was bugs and stuff that Java couldn't do and Python couldn't do. You got to go to Granny first, which is C, and solve it. It doesn't. Yeah. Oh, it doesn't work with this processor. There's a bug where this Python keeps hitting this error. Blah 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 blah. Python can't handle it. Where's the C programmer? Where's he at? Come fix this goddamn bug.
Yeah, come fix this damn virtual machine.
Yeah. See what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Should he learn?
Huh?
I guess he should, if he can save himself on some money.
What's that?
That Java developer that just call the C developer.
Yeah, he probably
he should.
He should learn.
Yeah,
he should at least understand it so he can get the right C developers. Like if you don't know anything about your engine, a mechanic can tell you anything.
Yeah,
it's making this noise, and I don't know what it is. Okay, okay, this dude don't know what he's talking about as far as his engine. It's like a 10 cent fix, but I'm gonna charge this dude $200 for this 10-cent fix. Okay, he's willing to pay it. Boom. All right.
Yeah, there's the issue with that, getting taken advantage of.
Yeah, well, it is what it is, and when they keep popping up, understand C. That's like I'm going to teach you C. I try it for guys at a certain level. They teach you C.
I don't think Harvard even teaches C anymore. I looked on their syllabus early this year. I think they touch on it, like as far as variables and printf, but as far as like an entire language, I think they abandoned it in favor of Python and Java, because those are the industry standards now. And of course, they have, being that their school, they have to go by industry standards. And it's unfortunate because C is pretty powerful and it is important. But
it's about productivity. Right?
It is.
And by ease, right?
Not necessarily about ease. I think it's more about cutting costs, because that's an extra semester teaching C, which costs the teacher more in terms of time, costs the students more in terms of stuff like that. And again, C and C++ are no longer industry standards. So why are we teaching it if very few companies are hiring for it anyways? So,
and so it goes down the line.
You think Python is a worse programming language than C or C++? I know.
What is Python based on? underneath.
It's built on. As far as I know, that is based. Well, it needs an interpreter to run. As far as I know, the interpreter is based. Excuse me, it was built on C.
Yeah.
So
in other words, you have this nice shiny new vehicle that does all these whizzy wags. Still have an internal combustion engine underneath. Still there.
Yeah.
It's still there. So you abstract it over until you can't. Cover it over till you can't. And you look on it. Oh shit! I don't understand nothing that goes underneath there. But that's functional. That's functional over mastery.
Right. And would you say that? And so my argument would be that when that time comes when you need to learn to fix the engine, then you should learn it. And I think your argument is that you should learn it before you get to that point.
Yeah. At least have a working knowledge of it.
Okay. That's hard to quantify, but okay.
And why we just quantified it.
Well,
we just quantified it. Yeah, we just. What do you mean hard to quantify? We just did.
Well, that was in the context of a car, but like programming, a little bit more. Okay,
not really. You just told me no. It's still there. It's just built into the interpreter or the abstraction layer, the translation layer, as we used to call it.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
In other words, we need an interpreter. In other words, from one language to another, from Python to C, from C to assembly, from assembly to binary.
Zeno FHDTV says C++ is still used in industry. What are you talking about? I didn't say it wasn't used in industry. I said primarily it is not.
And what I'm saying is that's the foundation. Okay, it's like it's like a house. Okay, you can fix a house, you can do the plumbing and stuff like that. What happens is when hopefully the foundation doesn't go. It's supposed to be there and be solid.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. We have to fix the foundation. You have to know how to fix the foundation. Or bring somebody in that can. Are you that person?
No. Would you recommend would you recommend every homeowner learn how to build a house before they buy one? Because mastery?
It would be nice.
It would be, wouldn't it?
If people knew how to build their own homes. Then they could fix their own house.
Yep. That would be nice.
And they could help other people build their homes and fix their own,
That's true.
The further you get away from it, the fewer people actually know it. And it makes those people that do know it valuable. Much more valuable. Yeah. So in other words, back in the day, everybody pretty much did their own plumbing. Nowadays, you got to call one, but you got to pay a lot. Now it's getting to the point where people say, well, let me go back and figure out how to do my own plumbing again. So YouTube is full of how-tos.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So in other words, an expert has to sit there and teach you or show you how to do something. And then you have to go out and do it in the real world, struggle with it. So you got to struggle with it. Yeah.
Well, I think the point, like in the drive principle, is that even though you have to do it yourself, the struggle is minimized because the people that has already done the struggle, they're sharing their struggles with you, so you don't have to repeat them.
Yeah. Somebody has to struggle, and then
that's true. That's true too. Yeah. That is true.
And sometimes they'll give you an answer, but it's not quite complete. You still got to struggle with it. Because it applies, but it doesn't quite apply. And you might have to go to 10 different people for 10 different things to get the complete answer.
Yeah.
And still have to go back and apply it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
And you probably know amongst your own group, that you probably are an outlier.
I am.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nobody else I go to meetups in Orlando every single week. Nobody knows assembly. Nobody knows C++ or C. I'm the weirdo.
You're the weirdo.
Yeah.
And
So,
but you don't see the value in having learned it already because it's gone. I mean, you don't need it, but it's there. You don't understand how your knowledge was built upon it, how your understanding was built upon it, and understanding that they probably don't have, or insight that they don't have because you've gone through the process.
Oh yeah, I mean, most of them are JavaScript developers. So if they're having issues with like runtime, not runtime, but like issues with their compiler or with the node runtime or something, or it's crashing, they're shrugging their shoulders. So yeah,
I'm saying, but that's that kind of because they didn't get it. Okay,
either they get it or they just didn't bother because they didn't have to.
Yeah, and that's the trend.
That's always been the trend. But yeah, that's the downside of abstractions. Yep.
Whereas the PhDs have to go for mastery.
And the PhDs also have to invest 8 years of their life into it.
Yeah, but what do they get out on the other side?
It depends. I mean, they get a degree in mastery, but again, if you're talking about a programming language, who cares if you're have a PhD in C++ when C++ is not the standard anymore? Yeah, you have an understanding of the lower levels, and yeah, you're going to be an outlier, but it's not going to have any bearing on your productivity in the 21st century.
Ask Google.
What about Google?
They hired a whole bunch of PhDs.
And they also fired a whole bunch of PhDs.
Dude,
they fire people all the time because they do what they're told and they don't do what Google wants is they want people to be able to solve new problems that haven't been solved yet. And they're not paying, from what I've heard, the right amount of price for people to do that. So they go through people like water, from what I've heard. So doesn't surprise me. But yeah, it's 6:45, and I've been talking for 4.5 hours.
All right.
Thank you, BGS. Thank you so much. Love your song.
It's better than you ranting at me in absence. I said, this motherfucker ranting at me, man. I'm not even able to defend myself. Let me get on and get this motherfucker online so I can put him over my fucking knee and spank his ass. Whippersnapper. Shit.
All right, man. I have to go eat, man.
All right.
You have a good one, man.
All right. You too.
All right. Bye.
Peace.